G'day guys, Jace here from Flying with Jace. Welcome back to our navigation basics session. This week, chapter 3, the ERSA and the VFRG. This is just a quick intro into these two documents. It's important that you know what they are and important that you know that they exist. So let's jump straight in. What are they? VFRG, the Visual Flight Rules Guide. You'll mainly find this one online. In the short interim, when they brought out a whole lot of new regulations last year, they took down the online version, or only had an online version, only had a historical online version available. You had to download and print the new version. I believe very early in 2022, the new online version will be available. It's a big document. Basically what it is they've condensed all of the rules. So all of the civil aviation orders, all of the regulations, all of the relevant information for day VFR flight. They've condensed it down into one document, so you don't have to flick from document to document to document to look for the rules relevant to your VFR flying. And for your average recreational pilot, this is going to be your document to go to for rules and regulations. Don't bother printing it. The issue with the printed copy is if they update the online one, they don't tell you necessarily. So you may have a printed copy that is out of date, that has incorrect information in it, and you won't know about it. So as soon as they sort out the glitches in the system, get the new document uploaded and online, go with the online version of the Visual Flight Rules Guide. The other one is the ERSA. You'll hear me talk about that a lot, the En Route Supplement Australia. The En Route Supplement Australia, here's a list of stuff that's in it, but basically if you're going flying, this will give you all the information relevant to your flight planning. It'll give you all the information relevant to waypoints, to PRDs, but more importantly, each individual airfield will have its own page and its own info. Now, a lot of this exists on or in your EFB now. So a lot of us are doing away from carrying the original ERSA, which is quite a big thick book around, and just carrying an EFB. But your EFB will use the ERSA as its source information. Okay, they're both online. As I said, the VFRG, it's available at the CASA website. ERSA is available at the Air Services Australia website. If you go to the website for ERSA, it's free to access it, free to download a digital copy, free to download individual pages from it. If you want to buy it, it's about $40 and $100 and something a year amendment. If you're using that downloaded copy, you need to check the validity. And if you look, for example, the ERSA that I've used here is dated the 2nd of December 21. So right now, at the time this video was made, that's the current one, but they are updated about 3 times a year. So just make sure if you're using a downloaded copy, not a straight offline copy, that you're using the most relevant one. Let's have a quick look at ERSA. Here are a list of sections that you'll find in ERSA. We'll look at the relevant ones very, very shortly, but if you want to pause and have a look, those are the relevant ones. And then, of course, it has each individual airfield. When you look through them, you'll see the airfield FAC, or facilities. So that's a list of all the facilities at the airfield. Some of them will have RDS. That stands for Runway Distance Supplement. For your standard recreational type flying, the runway distance supplement won't apply to you. That's when you're flying bigger, faster aircraft and you need to work out the length of the runway or any obstacles or anything that might reduce your runway length for takeoff or landing. All right, the first section I want to talk about is the PRD. Any of your prohibited, restricted or danger areas anywhere on any map will have a relevant entry in ERSA. So you can flick to ERSA, and let's say we saw on our map Romeo 625 Bravo. Okay, that's around Amberley. We know it's around Amberley, but it'll tell us what it is, okay, where it is. So in this case, it's 2,500 to 8,500. It's active by NOTAM. If you needed to speak to who owns it, that's who owns it. And what is it? It's military flying. But more important, or also equally as important, if it has its own AVFAX code, in this case AMX, if you were to put AMX in as a location into NAIPS, you would get the current NOTAM for this area. So every single PRD in Australia has an entry in ERSA, Romeo 564 for example here, okay, has an entry in here. So you can flick through this, look it up by number and find out all you need to know about it. So PRDs are in there. So if you were to be asked on an exam or to be asked in a flight test where you would find relevant info for a prohibited, restricted or danger area that isn't on a VTC, for example, the answer is in the front of ERSA. Okay, Aerodrome Codes. You'll see maybe in your EFB, or if you're putting into a flight plan, you'll need to know the code for a relevant aerodrome. So what is the code for the Acacia Downs Airfield in New South Wales? Well, it's YACS. When would I need this? When I'm entering into a flight plan, when I want to put a specific airfield into some of the Garmin products that don't allow you to necessarily put in abafoil. They might want the specific identifier. It also goes the other way. So if you had YBVY, what the heck is YBVY? Well, you can go to the Aerodrome ALA codes, look up YBVY, and it'll tell you that that's the Blue River Valley ALA. Okay, very, very handy. Or what is YWBH? You can look up the information here and it will tell you in there in ERSA. Okay, VFR waypoint codes. There's hundreds and hundreds of VFR waypoints. Again, you might want these specifically to put into an EFB or a Garmin product, say, putting in your flight planning mode, and you may look on your map and you might have Somerset Dam. What is the appropriate abbreviator for that? It's SMD, and there is its lat long. So if you need to enter that manually into your aircraft's GPS, or if you need to put this into your aircraft GPS for flight planning purposes, the info on each individual VFR waypoint, it's in the front of ERSA. The most important part of ERSA are the airfield diagrams. And as I've already alluded to, each and every airfield in the country has an entry in ERSA. There are two types. There are certified aerodromes and there are uncertified aerodromes. It's easy to tell the difference. In ERSA, uncertified have the shaded background. They'll also have the word uncertified written here, or the abbreviation for uncertified. Certifieds have a white background and a certified abbreviator. Okay, what's the difference? Well, you can read as well as I do. Uncertified airfields, this is what they know from the airfield operator. This is what the airfield operator told them at the time of printing. It may not have been updated. Things may have changed and you won't get a NOTAM to tell you. It may have lighting that doesn't work. There's no NOTAM to tell you that the lighting doesn't work. There'll be no TAFs or TTFs produced for these airfield. So if you're going to an uncertified field and you're going to rely on something like fuel or lighting, then you need to contact the airfield operator anyway, just to make sure that that is available. A certified airfield, you will get NOTAM information should any of this info change. Let's have a quick look at some examples. And you'll see these if you go flying with me. So we go to Chinchilla. Here's an example of what you'll get. Your validity date, the airfield elevation, that's very, very important. Okay, handling services if there's fuel available. The runways, what the runways are, how they're oriented to one another. All right, their lengths. That's kind of important if you want to operate in and out of this airfield. You'll get details of the physical characteristics, so grey silt clay or sealed or unsealed. Now restrictions, if you're going there on a C-130 you couldn't go there, for example. This is where it might say left-hand circuits runway 32, right-hand circuits runway 14. It's important that you read this restriction section. It's very, very important in fact. Lighting, if you're going to use it, will be in there. ATS communications, this is for Brisbane Centre, so cancelling SAR watch, getting information. It'll tell you relevant information about it. Here it says in circuit. So I would not expect to get 123.95 on the ground if it says in circuit. Okay, local information, all aircraft to turn on the runway with maximum radius turns. For example, they don't want you chewing up their runway. It may also have stuff in here to do with must do left or right circuits. CTAF info. If the airfield has a CTAF, the CTAF will have its information here. Okay, in this case 126.35, and it tells us it has an aerodrome frequency response unit. If you want to know what that is, you're welcome to look that up, but that's where that information would be. And then additional info, it's got perimeter fencing, there's bird hazard, and then it may also have a departure and approach. Let's look over here at Boona, okay, an uncertified airfield. It's got the background, the shaded background. Tells you who the contact info is for it. Diagram's a little different. They're not promising you any info in here. They haven't put the runway length in here. Okay, it may be further down in here. It may or may not be down there. Some will, some won't. If they're not exactly sure or they weren't provided info on the length of the runway, then they won't put it in, and you may need to call Mr. Arnott and ask him, hey, how long is the Boonah runway? I need 1,000 metres. Is it 1,000 metres? Here's our example again of fuel. In this case, we can get Brisbane Centre on the ground. Here's our local traffic information, for example, when it's flying, where it's flying. Visiting aircraft can't do a straight-in approach, so only locals can do stuff there. CTAF, noise abatement procedures. If you see these, you need to have a read so that you don't annoy the locals. Preferred runway. Visiting aircraft, not permitted to do touch and goes on runway 04. So that might be important if you're coming to Boonah for a training flight. You can't do a touch and go on runway 04. Have a good read. All right. The VFRG, we've already covered it. These are the main components of the Visual Flight Rules Guide. Pause it and have a look if you like. They're all in there. I'm not going to open individual pages. As you open each page, it drills down further and further with relation to the rules for those specific sections. All right, guys, that was a cheap, nasty, quick introduction to the VFRG and the ERSA. You're going to use these documents a lot in your flying training, so it's important that you know that they're there and what they do. As always, leave questions, leave comments, please, and get in touch if you want specific questions answered.